Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm coming to you guys to do a first 500-mile review of my 2021 Ford F-150 PowerBoost. To be honest with you, it's actually about 750 miles now, but for title purposes, 500 seem more appropriate. Now, I will say I absolutely love this truck, but it has not all been perfect. I actually had one issue with this thing that I'll talk about at the end of the video, but it was related to the transmission and it had me a little bit concerned. We'll get into that again at the very end of the video. First, I wanted to talk about some things, and we'll take the truck out for a ride in a moment. Now, one of the things that had me buy this particular truck actually even got me looking at the Ford F-150 in general. Number one, the hybrid was really what got me heading in this direction. I spent a lot of time in my truck with it just idling, and that's where the hybrid really started to pique my interest. Now, 500 miles in with this truck, I can say it is awesome. I was actually out earlier this week doing some drone stuff, and I thought, you know, I'm gonna take my camera mount that I usually have on the bars for my bike. I just put that right up on the steering wheel, pointed it at the dash, because I wanted to record one piece of information that I was unable to find prior to buying this truck, and I said, I'm going to provide that information, is how long does this thing idle on battery? How long does the truck have to run before it shuts back off again? Just running air conditioning and all of the electronics of the truck. And over a 30-minute engine run time, the motor ran for 2 minutes and 41 seconds. That blew me away. Now, there is a idle setting in this that's called Eco Idle, which I have turned on. What it does is bumps up the RPMs to put power into that battery pack. I think non-Eco Idle is about 800 to 900 RPM. With Eco Idle on, it jumps up to about 1200 RPM. Now, if you're using this for, say, powering a camper or something like that, where it might be running overnight and you might have people sleeping around you, you probably won't run that Eco Idle setting because it's gonna run the RPMs up a little bit higher and it's gonna be a little bit louder. I'm mostly doing all of my idling during the day on a construction site, which is already loud to begin with. The difference between 800 RPM and 1200 RPM is not even noticeable. So I turned that on. All in, for me to be able to idle the motor on battery is a huge convenience. Not only not to just burn fuel while you're sitting there idle, it's just harder on the motor. You go onto these job sites, they're dusty, so while that truck is running, it's that air intake is just sucking in that dust. It's just a lot of wear and tear unnecessary on the motor. You're saving all of those idle hours, and if you do the basic calculation, which a lot of people maintenance-wise and stuff will tell you that 1 hour of idle time is equal to about 25 miles of wear and tear on the powertrain, that you're actually talking about 9,400 miles a year off of the motor itself from all of that idle time. And that's huge. That's a big, big difference when you're talking about longevity in terms of these vehicles. I've said enough in the garage here. Let's go ahead and take this thing out on the road. Let's go ahead, grab the keys, go for a ride. This truck, I've got 729 miles. Again, I named the video 500 miles, just seemed better for a title, but just hit 730 as I'm speaking. And this thing is absolutely awesome. Now, as I mentioned, that interior work surface, that's one of the things that actually got me looking at the F-150 to begin with, just because it was a smart feature. And it's just funny because a $165 option is enough to get me to look at it and say, hey, that's interesting. I want to know a little bit more about the F-150. The fact that this thing comes up, the shifter folds down in a parked environment, for somebody who's working in their truck, it's awesome. I was able to go out, I was doing some aerial survey the other day, and I had the drone controller set up in here, the truck, again, idling with the motor off. The moonroof was open, which, by the way, I said I didn't want a moonroof. I'm happy I have it now because when I have this set up, I can actually have everything open, look up and see where the drone is in the sky. Awesome setup. Meanwhile, the air conditioning is running at 68 degrees, and I couldn't be any happier. One of the first features I was really excited to start to play with was the adaptive cruise control. Reason being, it's kind of a teaser to the upcoming Ford Copilot 360, I think they call it Blue Cruise. This adaptive cruise control has been an absolute game changer for a daily driver. Now, it takes me about a half an hour to get to work every day. A lot of stop and go traffic, especially on the way home. And typically, it's just a nightmare. But with adaptive cruise control, this truck it'll bring itself to a complete stop and just keep moving again. There are some things to learn with that. You can set the distance that the truck will keep itself from the vehicle in front of you, and it has 4 different levels. So a lot of times what I'll do is I find the closest level tends to be the most comfortable for me, where it's not leaving such a huge gap. It helps prevent people from trying to jump in between, which if they do, the truck will then slow down to gain distance from the vehicle that just cut in front of you. So I like to keep that gap tight.
That's what she said.
However, if I'm coming to a situation where I know the traffic's going to be coming to a stop, I'll increase that distance. And what that does is if there's a vehicle that's dead stopped that I'm coming up to and I'm heading towards it, it'll just start braking sooner and make it a more gradual stop, as opposed to if I leave it at that tighter distance, it'll be a little bit more of an abrupt stop, and not a big deal, but you just start learning how to make those adjustments. I am very excited for the future of Ford's Blue Cruise. I think it's going to be a total game changer, where you can just put that cruise control on, let go of the steering wheel, and it'll drive itself. Now, back in my heyday, I was a great knee driver. So back in, smoking cigarettes, which I used to smoke, ashing out the window, I used to drive stick, so you'd be ashing out the window, shifting gears, driving with your knee. And it was just funny because the other day I had a coffee in one hand and I was messing with a sandwich in the other, and adaptive cruise control was on. But I just found myself just giving the adaptive cruise control enough input with my knee to keep it from yelling at me for not touching the steering wheel. And it just kind of made me laugh, because going back to years ago, it's just funny because now using your knee is more or less just giving it that one little steering input it needs while you're looking at the road ahead of you. It's awesome, absolutely awesome. Now, another thing that has to be mentioned with this truck is the PowerBoost combined with the twin turbo 3.5 liter V6. This truck is a monster. I knew it was going to be powerful, but putting this thing in sport mode and getting on the gas feels like no other truck I've ever driven before. It is so fast, it blows my mind. There's some people who are really against the 3.5 twin turbo because they love the old rumble of a V8. I'm one of those people. I love a good V8 rumble. It sounds really good. But I'm getting to the point now where if you can give me a better engineered product that just has ridiculous throttle response, speed, and the only thing I have to give up is that sound, I hate to say it, but I'm all for it. And this is an example of just amazing engineering. When I smash the gas on this truck and it's in sport mode, there's no part of me that is thinking like, I just wish it sounded better, because I'm too busy, hands on the wheel, just laughing hysterically. Now, fuel economy. That's the other side of the power thing. I've heard a lot of people say that you kind of get eco or boost, you don't get both, and I would agree with that. But with this truck right now, 730 miles, it is averaging 18.1 miles per gallon. Now again, this truck is marketed to 24 city and 24 highway. I'm getting 18.1. I'm not disappointed by that, because this motor is still brand new, definitely not broken in. And I've also been kind of driving this truck not super hard. The first few hundred miles, I certainly babied it, but then after about 500 miles on this motor, then I started kind of getting into it to see what it had in terms of power. And ever since then, I haven't really been driving it in the most economical way possible, and I don't regret it. It's so much fun to drive that I enjoy getting on the throttle. Now, for those of you who are waiting for an F-150 Lightning, the electric version of the F-150, I think this hybrid is a perfect balance between the two. I am not ready to go full electric yet. I've mentioned before there's a lot of reasons for it. I'll probably make another video on that as the Lightning comes out, when I have a little more mileage on this truck at that time. I think it'll be a great time to make that video. But this is the perfect balance for me. As I mentioned earlier in this video, to be on a job site, the truck is fully powered off of electric. That's where this truck, to me, and I think a lot of other people in construction, is really going to be the best option possible. Now, also speaking of job sites, construction. It's important to note, I've seen people in the comments that have this whole, oh my God, you spent 70 grand, which I got it under 70, but you spent all this money on an F-150. It's way too much money for a pickup truck. But those are the same people that would probably not say the same thing about a Mercedes or a BMW or any of those other premium lines. There is actually a $56,000 Land Rover Velar that exists that is, it's funny, at $56,000, it's 10 grand cheaper than what I paid for this truck. But if you showed up to the job site in that Range Rover, those people on that job site, there is going to be so much chatter about how that guy is making enough money to pay for a $120,000 Range Rover that it's just funny because it's not what that is, but the badge carries the weight with that. Well, you can have all of the same creature comforts in an F-150, and instead people look at it and they're like, wow, that's a beautiful truck, and that's kind of all you get. So there is a beauty of blending in. Whether you agree or disagree, I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is learning this truck. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of tech here, and it's not just all of the gadgetry inside this vehicle, but it's also the hybrid versus gas motor. Trying to learn, right now it's in EV mode, and you start to try to gauge, okay, I'm cruising right now at 45 miles an hour. If I hit the gas hard, it'll kick the motor back on, but with this little EV coach screen, there's just a little slider that will kind of show you when you're getting close to kicking the gas motor back on and when it's charging. Right now I'm kind of in some rolling hills and stuff, so you're not going to use it there, but I have used that when driving in city conditions, going red light to red light. You get up to 30, 35 miles an hour, and you just want to keep it in EV mode because why not? So I find that it is a very great truck to be able to either flip it into sport mode and romp the snot out of it and have a ton of responsiveness there, or get it into that EV mode and just kind of baby it a little bit and try to maximize those electric miles. You get the best of both worlds. It really is an awesome offering, and I can get 700 miles to a tank of gas, well, all the while pulling 24 miles to the gallon and not having to rely on charging stations. I don't know. I think Ford has a great offering. I've seen some people that have said that they thought that the hybrid was kind of a half-hearted attempt at a hybrid, but I honestly think it was a perfect execution to somebody like myself who is buying a truck to actually utilize in construction environments, who's not ready to go full EV yet. So I think it's an awesome truck. At this point, 746 miles in, I would personally recommend it. Now, saying that I would recommend it, let's get into the transmission issue. This happened the other day. If I didn't find somebody else that had the exact same problem, I would have forever thought that I just had done something wrong. I looped around to my driveway, put it in reverse, and as I was backing into the driveway, the truck threw itself in park. Now, at first, I thought this was a crash avoidance thing. And the truck has done it before where, as you're backing up, something gets close enough and it'll stab the brakes on you. That is not what happened here. The crash alert did not come up. The truck ended up in park, and you can tell the difference between brakes and parking pall. Transmission appears to be fine. It hasn't happened since. As a matter of fact, I can't even reproduce that slop in the shifter since then. So I don't know if it was an isolated incident, but it happened. Ever since then, I have tried to reproduce it. I cannot. If it does, I will 100% get out the camera and film it myself. But being that it hasn't happened again, I can't reproduce it. I haven't taken it in for warranty on it. And the reasons for that, one, it hasn't happened again. And two, I can't reproduce it. So if I can't reproduce it, I'll take it to a dealership and they'll say, it's working fine. Okay, whatever. So the other part of that, it could be a software thing. All of these shifters now, it's all software, and it's very possible that with a future update, that goes away. I don't know. But just something I'll pay attention to in the future going forward. So guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I'll see you guys next time.